Hi, welcome to my channel where I discuss everything I love about my favorite books. Today, I finally get around to making a video that I've been meaning to make for months because I read this book, nearly 3 months ago, and I've been meaning to make a video about it, but life happened. I think I mentioned it briefly in another video. I won't go into that again, but anyway, today I would like to talk to you about The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett, which is the first Discworld book in publication order. The color of magic is octarine. All other colors are but feeble projections of this color, or something like that. So, when I first heard about Discworld, I thought it was a sci-fi thing exploring what it's like to live on a planet shaped like a disc, which it is to a certain extent, but I did not account for the magic in the world of Discworld. So if you don't know, Discworld is, of course, a planet shaped like a disc. It rests on the back of 4 elephants who stand on the back of a great turtle. The turtle has a name, Great Artuin, and astrozoology is a subject of study on the Discworld. People send out expeditions and do studies to find out things about the 5 animals that the Discworld rests on. One of the popular subjects is trying to figure out whether Great Artuin is male or female. and they mount expeditions to figure that out. Now, the first book, The Color of Magic, is the story of Two Flower and Rincewind. It's basically their adventures. Two Flower is the Discworld's first and possibly only tourist, and he creates quite a stir in the places he travels to. And he doesn't speak the language of Ankh-Morpork, which is the city that he starts his tour in. And so he hires Rincewind, who is an extremely incompetent and failed wizard, to be his tour guide, because Rincewind doesn't have a lot of talents, but he has mastered several languages, and he speaks one of the languages that Two Flower does, so he can be his translator and tour guide. So the book is not like one wide story, or like it doesn't have an overarching plot. Yes, the book has 4 separate adventures, if you will, and each one is sort of almost a short story-ish of one of the adventures that Two Flower and Rincewind have on their travels through Discworld. The first one is the story of how they meet and decide to travel together, and how Rincewind becomes Two Flower's tour guide. The story, the reason for their getting together involves the sale of insurance policies and setting an entire city on fire as a result. The second adventure that they are on is I think they meet one of the heroes of the Discworld, and there's some looting of dungeons involved. I believe there were even speaking toadstools, if I remember correctly. There's one with dragons in it, and a lot of and flying through clouds and such, or maybe that's in the second book and I'm misremembering. And then there's the last one, which involves the expedition that I just mentioned, where they are trying to figure out whether Great Artuin, the giant turtle bearing the Discworld, is male or female. So this is like, I guess, the high-level overview of the stories in this book. It's not one big plot, it's not one overarching story. The only connecting point is that they're Two Flower and Rincewind's adventures, and they meet different people along the way in each of these short stories. Let's go off into a discussion about the gods of Discworld, at least the sense I got from them just from this book. There is, of course, Death, who is, I don't think he is one of the gods, at least I don't think he's described to be, I don't remember, I don't know if he qualifies as one of the Discworld's gods, but he plays a prominent role in this, and he is, this was a reread, I forgot to mention, this was a reread for me. I had read the first 6-7 books. I had read up to Sorcery, I don't know how many books that is. The next book that I was scheduled to read was Pyramids. But then I found out that Penguin is redoing all the audiobooks for Discworld, and I figured I'd continue on in audio because, I felt like all the comedy in these books would make for some great audiobooks. But the audiobook for Pyramid isn't scheduled to be out until next month, I think, or maybe it's going to be out in April, I don't remember. But so I figured I'd go reread everything I've already read. I'm working my way through the series in publication order, so I figured I'll go reread everything I've already read in audio. So I started with The Color of Magic, and I finished The Light Fantastic. I'll make another video about that. And this decision to reread 7 books, they're short, so it wasn't a hard decision to make, but it was also because I listened to a sample of Weird Sisters, and Indra Varma is the narrator for that. She's an actress, and I believe she was in the Game of Thrones. I haven't seen the series, so I don't know what character she played, but she is a phenomenal narrator. I listened to the audiobook for like 3 minutes, and all the jokes felt so much funnier than when I read them over a year ago. So it was sort of a no-brainer decision to just reread everything on audio while I waited for Pyramid to come out. So that's how this reread started. I'm going to work my way through the rest of the books on audio and hopefully make videos about them as I go. I took a second there to figure out how I got to this point, why I started talking about the reread. It was because I was talking about my impression of Death, who is a character in Discworld, right? And his everything he says is always written in full caps. And in the new audiobooks, there is one narrator for Death through all the books. There are different sub-series. Each sub-series has a different narrator. So Indra Varma, like I mentioned before, is the narrator for the Witches sub-series. Colin Morgan is the narrator for the Wizards sub-series. I forget the name of the narrator for the Death sub-series. And then there are some standalones that are being narrated by different people. Like I believe Andy Serkis, is that the name of the Lord of the Rings narrator? He did Small Gods, I believe. So anyway, there's a lot of good narrators. Check them out if you'd like to. But anyway, back to talking about my impression of Death. So in the future books, he gets pretty philosophical and says a lot of deep things. Even in the second book, there's some things that he says which are like pretty profound. But in this book, he's just a somewhat petty person who is after Rincewind because Rincewind thwarted him that one time, so he's out to get him. So there's a lot of comedy to be derived from there, but it's not it doesn't seem to be the same character that's in the later books. He does in the later books, Death does indulge in some trivialities. Like there is I think one scene in which he's playing a game of cards with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, if I remember correctly. I don't remember which book that is. It might be Weird Sisters, I forget. But in this one, he's just after Rincewind trying to get him, but his voice is already there with the depth and the all caps voice, which the audiobook narrator has done a really good job of, in my opinion. And then the other gods that we see in the course of this book. So first of all, there's one joke in the book about how the gods go around breaking atheist windows. So I thought that was a great joke because it married the vengeful gods of our world with the people with our tendency sometimes to not believe things, to not change our opinions in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Because, why are those atheists still atheists if the gods are going around breaking their windows? And then some portions of the story happen, or the course of their progress is manipulated by a bunch of gods who are playing a board game and are just killing time, and so are using the people in our story, Rincewind, Two Flower, and a few others, I guess, to win their board game. So they're just manipulating people and their lives to win board games. Again, I think there's a deep thought in there somewhere about the gods of our world as well. I'm sure, if you think about it, there is some parallels we can draw. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And then another thing that I really enjoyed, or thought was done very well, is Rincewind is a failed wizard for some reasons. He's just not very good at being a wizard, and he used to go to Unseen University, which is the wizard school, and he was, I believe, expelled from there because he is just a bad wizard. But he wishes that there was something other than magic to explain all the worldly phenomena. He wishes that the explanation for lightning isn't that a bunch of gods are having an argument in the sky. There's this so Two Flower, he's a tourist. He brings a camera. That's not what it's called in the books. I think they call it a picture box. And the first time he takes it out, he just points it at a place, and then a full color picture comes out. And Rincewind makes a joke about it to someone, that there's a demon inside it that draws pictures when Two Flower tells it to. It later turns out that that's true. There is, in fact, an imp, or I forget the creature's name, but I think it's an imp, that draws pictures when Two Flower tells it to. It complains frequently about running out of color, about not having enough light, and it cooks bacon and you can smell it from outside the box. There's a lot of hilarity around that camera, but Rincewind gets severely disappointed when he finds out that his joke is in fact true. He wishes that it operated on physics and mechanics. These words aren't used. I'm just deriving that from his longings. There is one of the stories, one of the adventures, they end up in a completely different universe, which happens to be a universe like ours. Two Flower and Rincewind end up as travelers on an aeroplane, and in this world, Rincewind is a nuclear scientist, and apparently he's a good one. He doesn't seem incompetent as a scientist. He is a doctor of a nuclear science, I guess. I don't know. So I think Rincewind has an aptitude for science, I believe, but he finds himself in a world where there's magic, and he doesn't know how to manipulate magic, so he's not good at it. I loved that reversal of our world, where I guess people like us, people who read fantasy, maybe sometimes wish and hope that there was magic in the world, but all we get is physics. And in Rincewind's world, he wishes that there was physics, and all he gets is magic. I love that. I thought that made a great point. Then there are some wonderful jokes that I loved. I think this book has probably my favorite joke of all time. I'll put it up on the screen, but this quote: Rincewind squinted up at the sword. a rescue attempt had hitherto been so far at the back of his mind that if some advanced speculations on the nature and shape of the many-dimensional multiplexity of the universe were correct, it was right at the front. This I found hilarious. There was I was watching a video a long time ago about it was, I think, one of the Isaac Asimov Memorial Day debates or something like that. I forget what it is. If I find it, I'll link it in the description. But it was a debate hosted by Neil deGrasse Tyson, if I remember correctly. There was a bunch of physicists discussing the shape of the universe or the meaning of nothing and things like that. And some of them brought all of these weirdly shaped glasses, talking about, trying to hypothesize what the shape of the universe could be, that shape of space-time and things like that. And here is Sir Terry Pratchett just having himself a laugh about it. That joke was fantastic. I loved it. And then there's another thing, like in the story where Rincewind and Two-Flower are transported to another universe. They when they are reverted back, there is this whole sequence talking about how little it changed. Like there are fewer dinosaurs, fewer wars. It feels like overall the impact of bringing them back wasn't too much. But on the other hand, entire universes or entire planets ceased to exist. So there was too little change and also too much. So I thought that section was just really well written. It spoke to me somehow. I don't have much more to say about it than that. Yeah. And then I guess the shape of the world itself leads to all kinds of hilarity. There is one of the things about the disc is that the edges of the world is an ocean. So the edge of the disc is an ocean, and it waterfalls off onto the four animals. I've always had questions about that. I don't know if they're answered in later books, but do the animals get wet? Does it bother them that they're being constantly drenched by the water? And how do the oceans get refilled? Does the water come back up somehow? Anyway, the rim of the disc is an ocean, and at some point, Two-Flower and Rincewind find themselves very close to the edge, about to fall off in a boat on that ocean. And there was a line that said they were running out of world. Very unique Discworld joke, I think. And the other thing, I don't remember if this is mentioned in this book or in the next one, but light, because of the intense magical field around the Discworld, light travels at the speed of sound. I think, I started out by saying that, I thought this was a sci-fi exploration and whatnot. It's not. It's a fantasy series, but it has so many sort of scientific elements just like dropped in there casually. I love it. It really it makes me so happy to find those little scientific references here and there. It's beautiful. And the manipulation of science, I guess, like with the speed of light and the speed light travels at the speed of sound in this world. And so there's this whole description of how the sun sets and rises and how the light flows through the disc world. It's beautiful. So, in conclusion, I loved this book. I love absurd humor in general. The Hitchhiker's Guide by Douglas Adams is one of my favorite series of all time, and I grew up reading P.G. Wodehouse. So Terry Pratchett feels a lot like home, and I think after the first page of reading the Discworld series, where I think that was when I finally found out that this is a funny series with a lot of absurdist elements. I think I was in love with it by the first page, and this was a fantastic experience. The audiobook reread was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I did that after I started this channel, so I could come to you guys about it. Thank you for watching. If you're still here, I really hope that you'll go check out Discworld if you haven't already. If you enjoy humor, if you enjoy absurd comedy, this is a great series of books to read. And yeah, I plan to work my way through them at some pace, and I will make videos as I go. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.